real hard on putting this together, and we really appreciate it. I think we need to clap one more time. You know, last night we met at the Lone Star, and to think about how people really enjoyed Brandon. At my table, we had people from Tyler, Texas, from Dallas, Texas, from Greenville, from Longview, from Long Beach. I mean, from all over these places. You know, that was last night, Susan. Susan pointing, trying to point toward all of those. Yeah, Polly, excuse me, from Roswell, Georgia. But anyway, I think the point is, all right, Wayne, I'm starting it right this second. We all did love Brandon.
Still do.
Still do. Still do. And, you know, when you look at the interstate and say how the interstate all of a sudden detoured past us, it really did. And that's bad, but really it wasn't horrible. But not long ago, Susan and I were doing the grandchildren duty, and we were in Birmingham, and on the way back, she said, we ought to stop through Brandon and see what they've done to your old house. And I thought, well, that'd be a good idea. And I thought, you know, what we'll do is we'll get off on this exit on the east. I don't know what the number is, but we got off.
59.
56, 59.
59.
59. But the point is this. When we got off and as we drove along, I was telling Susan, I said, well, that Will Spann was here, and Charles Vance was over here, and here were the Tigrets, and here was Ann Baker, and here's Charlotte Mitchell was over here, and here's Hogan, and here's Alan Wagner, and here's Sonny, and Charlotte Graves, and you just go right on up, and Linda Watson, and Brenda Boyce, and you hit the top of the hill, and there's Larry Benton, and you go down, and you got the Ponders on the left, and you got Freddie Farmer on the left as you're going down, and all of a sudden I thought, you know, here are my vision of a 66-year-old remembering what it was when I was a 16-year-old. And that was what I was doing. And so I want to take you back for a minute and remember that. In 1964, there was a group that was called the Fabulous Four. You know who that was?
The Beatles.
The Beatles, that's right, Charles. All right, and Kathy Duncan.
Oh, the Beatles.
And the Beatles, I read back in April, there's only been one time where a group has held the top 5 spots on the Billboard, and that was the Beatles in April of 1964. Now, what were they? What were those songs? I Want to Hold Your Hand, that was one. Help is not one. Please, Please Me, that was it. Twist and Shout, that was good. Hard Day's Night. Hard Day's Night's not it. She Loves Me.
So that's it.
All right, now, let's start going up that hill, like coming into Brandon, in that 57 Chevrolet, Willie. Yellow, with a white top, hard top. That meant it was 4-door, and you let all the windows down, stick your arm out so you'd act like you had a muscle as big as Willie's. But you didn't. But I want y'all to think, I mean, the people like my wife, Joyce, others who are guests here tonight, they won't remember this, so y'all can just think about your own hometown, where you grew up, and the things that you remember, because the rest of you are going to remember this. Go up that hill, and as you go up to the top of the hill, on the right was Mr. Sam and Atra's house, and across the street was a Shell service station. And that Shell service station, you'd get gas, but not only would you get gas, they would wash your windows, they would check your oil, they'd check your tires, they did all that. It cost about 40 cents a gallon. And you get 5 gallons for $1, Willie said. And if you look over, if you think about it, you look back over to the left there, that's when Mr. Fred and Martha Harrell built a store over there. Y'all remember that? And then shopping center. And then right on past that was what I call the Tigard store number 3, because it was the third Piggly Wiggly, whatever you call it, grocery store that Mr. Tigard had. And you went on past that, and all of a sudden you saw in my brain, I saw Dr. Watson's old office. And for some reason, I remember David Stockstall's mother was a nurse. I don't know if he's here tonight, but hey, David, it was your mother, wasn't it? It was. And across the street, sort of up on the hill, was Mr. C.W. Rhodes, right, Willie? And that co-op. And then when you got right to the square, you would look across and you would see all those lawyer offices, whether it was Mr. Ed Jr. McIntyre, David Williams, or McLaurin's. I'm missing a few, but then when you got into the square, then you saw things such as on the left, Music Store, which has been there since 1833 or something, I don't know, long years ago. And you're going around the square, and at one time there was a movie theater. And then you went to Barnes, the Lynn Theater, and then you went to the Mr. Barnes store, and then you went around to that Five and Dime store, and right there on the corner was a Gulf station run by the Roundtrees. Remember that? And if you go back on the right, you go to the courthouse. And that's where people such as Earl Dean Rhodes, I'm sure everybody got a letter from Earl Dean whenever your name was in the paper. But Earl Dean, and then Carroll, and then Philip Warren, and then past that was a newspaper. And it was the Rankin County News or the Brandon News. But you remember what it said on it? The only paper in the world who's concerned about the people of Rankin County. That's true. And then you went on around and you saw the Rankin County Bank. And you think about that, and I hadn't asked Gibb, but, eventually Mr. Graves, Mr. G.S. Graves, became chairman of the board of the bank. And I hate to say it because I could be wrong, but I don't think he had a high school education. There he is. 7th grade education.
Wow.
And there wasn't anybody in the whole city that didn't respect him more. And if you knew he had a 7th grade education, you would vote and say, let's make him the chairman of the board. He was that good. And if you may remember, if you were ever riding in a car and met Mr. Graves, he had a hat on and he would tip it. Remember that? He would tip it. But remember that square because at different holidays, whether it was the 4th of July or Memorial Day, all of a sudden there was either the Lions Club or the JCs. They would end up big enough money, but they'd also stop those cars that would come through because they didn't have the interstate, and we'd give you a Pepsi Cola. Remember that? Hospitality Day. Yeah. Right? And as you go past the Rankin County Bank, you came to Johnny Baker Ford. And every October, you were waiting for him to pull that cover off so you'd know what that new car looked like. And then right past that was Nettle's store. And you would see Mr. Joe in there, and he had on a starched white thing right up to his neck. It was something. And then past that was May's Motor Company. That's Dan Tucker, the Chevrolet company. And it would be the same thing there as where the new cars would come out. And you went across the street right past Roundtree, you saw Mr. Walter's shop, where you're going to get a buzz. And that's what it was going to be. And then past that would be the Thompsons. Remember Marvin Thompson and Margaret Thompson? And in the back of that store, you would see Mr. Red Brown. Y'all remember this? And Mr. Brown would have a little eyepiece, and he would fix watches, and he would fix jewelry right there in that store. And then past that was a shoe shop. You remember that where you could have a shoe repair shop. Chanel, Mr. Chanel. And then past that was another barber shop, Mr. Wells. And then past that was the only place that I think really is still in existence as it was back then, and that's Grantham Cleaners. And if you really think about it, here they were, Patsy, Sue. Is Sue here? Sue. Ronnie.
I consider it.
Yeah.
She came in.
Hey, Sue. So nice to see you. And they lived upstairs. And the cleaners was downstairs. And then across the street was the Brandon Cafe. Now, and the pool hall. But we never could go in the pool hall. But the Brandon Cafe you could go into. Now, I will tell a story on my dad. You know, my dad didn't believe in eating out. He never believed in eating out. He believed in growing it and then fixing it at home, and that's where we'd eat. I always wanted to eat out, but I never got to eat out. In fact, the first time my folks ever took me out was when I graduated from medical school and they took me to the Piccadilly. And that's the truth. But the Brandon Cafe, I did get to eat there occasionally. But I got to eat there because the football team could eat there before a football game. I don't know if we did it for every game, once a year, or whatever. But I remember this. At the end of the time that we ate there, I was leaving, and of course I was probably one of the younger ones leaving at the end. And all of a sudden, I saw Butch Lawrence's dad go up, and he paid for however many there were in there. It had to be 35, 40 people, and I saw him pick that tab up. I'll never forget that. Thank you, G. So past that was the pool hall where Willie was. I know Mr. C.W. would have. Yeah, he would get you out. But across from that was White Alto, and that was the Ponders. Remember Russell Ponder and Mike Ponder? And then later on, I think that was, who bought that? Somebody bought that from me. Wayne Ball? Okay. I couldn't remember. And then on the corner was, and also the one that I remember was Carol Kennedy's place. And on Saturday morning, they had a 50-gallon tank out there where they were burning stuff because it was wintertime, and all those farmers would come in and sit down and talk and chew the fat or tell you about what was going on, what was growing, what wasn't growing. And then across the street was the old white hospital. And that hospital, later became Brandon Furniture. Yeah. But it was a great hospital, so we thought at the time. And that was where Dr. Mitchell and Dr. Schuster and Dr. Roberts took care of us in that hospital.
Dr. Holyfield.
Dr. Holyfield was long years before, that's true. Yeah, Dr. Mitchell. And of course, Overby Store. And Overby Drugstore, you could see Mr. Rule in there fixing up all these prescriptions to try to make people feel better. We knew all these people, every one of them. And I've forgotten the Dodge place. Oh, it's right on past that, it was. But at OB Drugstore, the thing that I remember the most about that is that in the afternoon, if you had saved your money and hadn't bought a footsicle or hadn't bought a cherry Coke, it was 15 cents for a cherry Coke. And that meant you were going to have to save some money at lunchtime so you could get your cherry Coke. But those are the things that I remember, and I got a minute to go, Wayne. And I want to tell you that as we turn left and as we go down to that school, I think about what was said a while ago from Tom. Well, maybe, actually it was Wayman talking about it's been 70 years since D-Day. and you think about those heroes of people that actually, for our freedom, for us to be here today, what they did to make that beach clear so that we could save France, we could save England, and we could live like we do today. But also, it's those teachers. We've talked about them, from Mr. Herring to Ms. Ward to Ms. Mashburn to Ms. Hamilton. Remember Ms. Hamilton? Yeah. So we look and we see, we really only have one here tonight. But Mr. Worley, we appreciate what you and all those teachers did for us to get us to where we are today. And we'll look at it and we'll think about, somebody said this before. Said somebody else actually drilled the well that you're drinking the water from. And that's so true. And we have. And we appreciate you drilling that well and fixing it where we could drink the water and that we could be who we are today. Thank you, Mr. Worley, and all the teachers. Wayne?